Hi everyone,
This is Stephen,
and Grace,
and thank you for coming to watch A Portrait on Portrait, chronicling the evolution of portrait.
which has been, is, and will continue to be such an important organization at Vassar.
Before we get started though, we wanted to take a moment to acknowledge the EB and GB members whose stories are documented in this film. Thank you for your vulnerability, time, and honesty.
This film is ours, and this film is yours.
This film and this organization would be nothing without all of us who have carved out the space and place to belong and express ourselves.
And so with that, we hope you enjoy. This is
A Portrait on Portrait.
Welcome to the launch of Portrait Magazine, Vassar's only Asian and Asian American student-run publication here at Vassar College. Please join me in giving a warm round of applause to the members of Portrait.
Speed, and
Portrait was really born out of Alex Kim, who is the founder of Portrait. I think she created it out of the desire to provide a space for people to gather really meaningfully, but also work on a really cool and creative product together.
I wanted to create a space where Asian identifying students were able to freely express themselves, their opinions and their stories and experiences, and just be comfortable enough to have discussions that are not taking place in any other spaces on campus. As an Asian international student myself, whose first language isn't English, I felt like I couldn't find a community where I felt comfortable enough to share my experiences, and oftentimes I just felt like the stories that I had to tell were not valuable and relevant enough to be shared with the majority of the people here. And that's when I knew that, we don't have this space on campus where we can have free discussions and come together as a group.
I remember hearing about Portrait for the first time, and I just got really excited. I think beyond being a part of a new student magazine, I think I was just really excited about the possibilities of the magazine. And so I remember thinking I want to be a part of that, I need to be a part of that. And so I can't believe it's already been 3 years now since the start of Portrait.
So when I heard that Alex wanted to start this magazine, I'm an English major. I've always had an appreciation or a passion for storytelling and the power of sharing experiences and sharing creativity. And I was just really excited to be able to be a part of that and contribute what I had to offer to the space.
I wanted to join Portrait just because I wanted to explore my Asian identity more, because growing up in a predominantly Asian community, I didn't really think about my Asian identity at all. I grew up in Beijing, but I was born in the US, and after 9th grade, I moved back to the US, to California. So I finished high school in Cupertino, which is a majority Asian community. It was only when I came to Vassar, which is primarily white, and I started to think more about who I am as an Asian person and what that means, and how I'm perceived by other people.
I think I grew up really sheltered. I grew up sheltered in diversity is what I always say, having grown up in New York City, in Queens, where it's predominantly an immigrant population. Coming to Vassar, though, was kind of a culture shock because, it was really hard to come by people who, knew my experiences and knew them, on a personal level. And so for me, I think Portrait has allowed me to be okay with having questions and asking those questions, but being more okay with, sometimes I'm not going to get the answers to all those questions. And I think that was such a learning moment for me, and Portrait has been so fundamental to that process.
In my high school, even though there was a significant number of Asian American students, there wasn't really an outlet for us to talk or vocalize or express ourselves. So I came to Vassar feeling really excited to start doing that. But even when I got onto Vassar campus, there weren't many avenues where Asian American or Asian students could express themselves creatively. And that's really what I was looking for. So I think with the advent of Portrait, there was a creative outlet, not just a, political or an academic or, kind of more conventional ways of expression.
Portrait initially started as a small project of a subcommittee of Asian Students Alliance in the hopes of preserving the voices and experiences of Vassar's Asian identified community. We reached out to students, professors, and alum for help and suggestions, and to simply share their stories with us. Thankfully, our work drew attention from the larger Vassar community and was able to grow as a self-standing organization. As we always say on the last page of every issue we publish, Portrait would not exist without you. So I was looking at the old archives of the members from the Asian Students Alliance back in the 1970s. And I wrote a piece on that for the first issue of Portrait. And Portrait is inspired by these old archives created by our alumni, like ASA, and Portrait will not be here without them. I don't remember the exact sentence, but something like inspired by the old archives of ASA, Portrait serves as an homage to inspire the future generations at Vassar, which is a big mission. I don't know if we can achieve that, but I knew that, if there is a group where we can come together and use all the creative skills that we have to create something wonderful, beautiful as Portrait is, I thought it would be really fun and rewarding for all the members.
I'm trying to think back to my first year. I think I was just really excited by the idea as well, and also wanted to gather with other people who I connected with. I think being in the headspace of being in your first semester, first year, at least for me, you are kind of searching for places to plant your feet on the ground, and I think seeing both the creative angle and also the connective angle of Portrait laid out in front of me, I was pretty much just like, well, this sounds like the perfect opportunity to connect with more people and also use my creativity in a way that is meaningful. So, yeah.
Overall, Portrait has grown immensely. I think everyone will say this. We started out with, I believe, 15 total contributors. I don't know if any of us were really expecting it to become such a thing, but now we have almost 40 contributors for each issue, which is really impressive. But I think one thing that I appreciate is that I feel the spirit of it has stayed the same in a lot of ways. The original intention that Portrait was created with, that original enthusiasm and just that pure, we all joined a Portrait because we looked at it and we said, wow, this is going to be really, really fun. This is something we want to put our time and our energy into. I think that has remained unchanged.
The magazine has grown from being a fairly thin publication to being a much thicker one, which is really exciting. It's so cool to see more people kind of gather around this thing that we all really believe in. It was very new territory to, you know, guide and facilitate a process for an entire group of people and to like build that process. And I think there was a lot of uncertainty on my end in terms of how to provide the best, most meaningful experience for the people involved in portrait, both from like a level of what design skills you'll learn and pick up and how you'll evolve as a designer, both from the sense of whether or not you feel like you are welcome in this space and feel like this is a really meaningful space for you to find community. I think just wanting to make sure that everyone is able to get what they want out of this experience and more, and also find the connections that they want to, or find connections that they maybe didn't expect to find but that ended up being really meaningful for them. I think navigating all of these questions and yeah, just trying to ensure that everyone has a really good time and feels really safe and excited about what they're working on was probably one of the most difficult things to figure out, because there's also no single right answer, and I think each semester the answers to those questions have changed.
As COVID happened, everything had to take place virtually, in a virtual space, and we kind of had to restructure and reimagine how Portrait functions as a group.
I was on campus, so I'd heard about the pandemic, and I was like, oh no, that's so sad, but it'll never come to America, so I'll be okay. And then it came to America, and then we all got sent home, and then we stayed home.
I was at Vassar. It was spring of my junior year. It was my first semester as editor-in-chief.
Well, I applied that semester to become treasurer, and I think right as like I got the position, but then soon after the pandemic started, so I wasn't really able to and everyone was kind of just like scrambling. So
with the way things have worked out over the past year with the pandemic and everything, it has definitely become a lot more difficult to maintain a sense of community, because we're not able to gather in the same space anymore, and we're not able to have in-person launch events.
The beginning of the launches really started really when the magazine started. It was kind of born together. I was already serving on the student advisory committee at the Loeb Art Center, which is Vassar's on-campus museum. And I just remember looking around the walls and thinking, how could we reflect voices that haven't been heard yet in this space? And so I thought, what an opportune moment to, bring in, celebrate the hard work of these contributors, but also change up the institution space. And so I think it's just a perfect marriage between celebrating what portrait is and bringing that into this space where people can see what portrait could be and will be. Something so special about portrait is that it's so rooted in teamwork and in community. There was something so isolating about quarantining in the pandemic that I then saw the launch as a space where everyone can come together after a semester's worth of just hard work and labor and dedication to the issue, and to really just be with each other.
It was really difficult to try and maintain the space, just because we were trying to continue this org, but also everyone was dealing with so much on a personal level. I think it was a real team effort to try and keep the org and the publication on track, and continue to offer space to the contributors as much as we could, even understanding that they might not necessarily be have the capacity to be in the space. I don't know, I think no one was really prepared to try and deal with the situation, but we all just did our best, and we're still here, so I guess it didn't go that badly.
The pandemic did inspire the theme for our last issue, which was parentheses, connect. And essentially the parentheses is it's an open interpretation for anyone. So you can input any kind of prefix you want and define connection or disconnection in your own way.
I think my first thought was, how are we going to continue to connect with everyone who is a part of this magazine? We were separated by a lot of things, including physical distance and a pandemic and uncertainty and time zones in particular, and many more things. But yeah, my mind immediately jumped to thinking about how to hold space for all these other things that were happening in the world.
I think that portrait is also really important because you're not creating things that are like expected of you as an Asian person. I think it's a space to kind of push back or like fight against a lot of stereotypes that people have.
At least in my personal experiences all my life, it made sense for me that Asian Americans and Asians had a place in STEM because of that stereotype that Asians are good at math. So if I saw an Asian scientist or an Asian American scientist or Pacific Islander scientist, I said, yes, that makes sense. Like, they belong there. But I never saw, API folks in music or writing or movies, right? I never saw people in these more creative spaces. And I began to see Asian culture as less creative, less worthy, right? That was kind of ingrained in me of, this is not mainstream for a reason.
The sense I get is that other contributors and other members of the magazine also feel like Portrait has really been a space where they found their voice, and I think especially with the rise in anti-Asian violence, knowing that there has been a space where you can find your voice and also where that voice is seen, heard, respected, celebrated, valued is really important. It has really meant just being a space of support and where we can really be with each other. I think it's important for a group of people, the collision of like personal experiences to provide that space for people to both figure out and recognize what responding looks like for them, and also for us to come together and respond collectively.
The fact that Portrait deliberately makes a space for people to express themselves, right? That is a direct response to anti-Asian hate. Because hate will always try to define people in a way that like degrades the other. But I think Portrait is a really empowering space because people really have creative freedom to do whatever they want.
When I was a sophomore, I was really trying to figure out what it meant to belong in the spaces that I was in. And I think that Portrait has just been a beautiful way of planting people and showing that, we exist and that we belong. And so in more ways than one, Portrait has really become like a second home to me. And my hope is that it'll be that for, all the other class years that are going to come after I graduate.
Well, I don't want Portrait to die. I want her to live a long, long, healthy life. I just want Portrait to continue being a good space for everyone the way it was for me. Because for me, it was extremely safe and it was extremely comforting. It was a lot of fun. I made good friends. Like, I want, as long as people kind of still have similar experiences of just good memories and good vibes from Portrait, I'll be happy. I'll have no complaints.
One thing that I'm really proud about for Portrait is just how the impact it's made on not only current Vassar students, but also like past Vassar students. Hearing about, like, when we send out the magazine to alumni and they send back their reactions, it's always like so heartwarming, and they always talk about how proud they are us of us being able to create this kind of space for Asian students at Vassar.
Now that we're having this conversation and I'm taking a step back, I think is when I can kind of zoom out and recognize all the like celebratory moments we've had. So yeah, it's really cool. I think it's also really cool just to see on our issue page, initially we had just one magazine, and now we have like a whole row, and eventually we're gonna fill 2 rows, and it's gonna be even more rows in the future. Or maybe not, you know, things might change completely, and this might evolve in an entirely unexpected way. Either way, it's really cool to see change happen in that way. And yeah, I don't think I really get the opportunity to acknowledge all of that change often, so I appreciate that I'm getting to do that now.
I hope Portrait to continue to exist in the years to come for a very long time, hopefully. My bigger hope for Portrait is to, right now, I feel like our words and expressions really circulate within the Asian community, but hopefully later in the future, I hope we can take our conversations into bigger spaces and engage in conversations with other minority groups as well as the bigger Vassar community.
Yeah, and I just hope that Portrait can continue forever, and I hope that when after I graduate, I get updates from the EB on like their new issue of Portrait.
Yeah, that's a really nice wish.
Just remember that your voices and your stories always matter. So please remember that. Don't be afraid to share your experiences, because it will always contribute to, you know, amplifying our voices and our presence. It's important, and I highly encourage everyone to share their experiences. Don't scare away from the opportunities.
I feel like I say it a lot, but I am going to say it again because I feel like it should be said as many times as I have the ability to say it. Portrait is made possible by its contributors. These students who don't have to be here, but put so much time and effort and energy and creative power into creating these incredible works of art for our publication.
It's really been such a pleasure and an honor to work with everyone and to come into contact with everyone in the ways that I have, whether it's through your drafts or through your designs or through our check-in questions and the conversations that we have in our meetings. I mean, at the end of the day, what Portrait is really about is connecting and finding community, and all of you have allowed that to happen, so I'm really grateful.
I really am just so grateful to have gotten to know the amazing people of Portrait, because yes, our issues are beautiful, but I think the community of people who are a part of Portrait is even more beautiful.
I really love Portrait. That's it. That's all.
All right, we are recording.
All right, awesome. So, wait, how did we say we were going to check in again?
Think of your one-word or phrase, and then make sure the answer says Portrait is your word.
Okay, yeah. Okay, thank you.
Portrait is talented.
Portrait is exploration.
Portrait is limitless.
Portrait is loving.
Portrait is thoughtful.
Portrait is creativity.
Family is an open-ended question.
Collective imagining.
Community.
The gift.
Strength.
Expression.
Happiness.
Heartwarming.
A workshop.
Motivating.
Expression.
Free.
Portrait is growing a garden.